everyone, my name is Onjali Raúf and I am an author, and I am so happy to be here on Moon Lane TV with you today. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I'm here today to talk about The Great Food Bank Heist, which is my brand new and very first work for Barrington Stokes, a beautiful publishing house which works to ensure that stories are accessible to all, including children with dyslexia. So I'm really hoping if you pick it up that you enjoy it. You may know me from my previous stories, which include The Boy at the Back of the Class, which came out in 2018, The Star Outside My Window, which came out in 2019, and then my latest book, which is The Night Bus Hero. Now, all of these stories, all of my previous books centre around an issue that I care about very deeply, and they also feature a mystery, because I love a mystery. I love wondering what's going on and who's involved and who's going to solve it, and that's no different with The Great Food Bank Heist, which is essentially a mystery and an adventure story. Now, this story features a young boy called Nelson, his sister Ashley, who loves her toy car, and two characters called Harriet and Krish, who are Nelson's best friends at school. But Nelson is a little bit different because, unlike Harriet and Krish, he has to go to his school breakfast club in the mornings, and he's someone who is experiencing something that we all know as food poverty, struggling to get enough food to get to have the energy that you need to get through the school day. So Nelson is constantly thinking about food and making up lists about food, and even though he has a wonderful mother who's working all hours of the day, sometimes there just isn't enough to go around, and so Nelson and Ashley are very much struggling with food poverty. Now, I know that most of you watching this will know that we have a huge problem of food poverty across the country, and you will know that because of the incredible campaigns run by Marcus Rashford and Dame Emma Thompson and Jack Monroe, who have all been absolutely magnificent in trying to highlight the fact that it is unacceptable for us to have food poverty happening across the UK and any part of the world, especially at a time when the world is producing so much food that we waste millions of tons of it. Now, it's an issue that's very close to my heart because as a child, growing up in the East End of London, living on a council estate, my mum and dad worked very hard, but sometimes, just sometimes, there wasn't enough money to go around. There wasn't enough money to cover the rent and pay all the bills and then ensure that me and my brother had everything that we needed. And especially as growing children, when you're constantly hungry, it could be a bit of a struggle. So I know what it was like to go to school and have free school meals and be teased for having those free school meals, not by everyone, but by some people who weren't so nice. I also know what it's like to sometimes feel so hungry that you just don't want to do any more lessons, that you want to go home and lie down and just wait until someone could give you something that you really want, or not having enough money to go out and buy the chocolates or sweets that everyone else is buying. So those feelings are very much central to the book, and Nelson and his sister and his beautiful mum try and play games in order to ensure that they can get through those tricky months. Now, thankfully, there are, of course, lots of places and lots of people who are helping children and families try and survive food poverty, and a lot of them can be found in food banks and breakfast clubs at school as well. And in the book, of course, it's called The Great Food Bank Heist, so there's going to be a food bank in there. There is a very special food bank that Nelson goes to with his mum to ensure that they have enough food for the tricky months. Now, I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to read a little bit of the book to you, and I'm going to read from page 10. So if you happen to have the book, you can go from page 10. To highlight just how special this food bank is and what it means to Nelson and his mum and to Ashley, not just because of the food, but all the other things that it offers. So here we go. Our bank, the one we always went to at the end of a really tricky month, was the best, the most fun, and the greatest bank in the world. That's because our bank wasn't anything like any of the boring old banks that you see on the high street, which are always grey and have big machines which swallow up cards and spit out bits of paper at you, and which are filled with grey-looking people who are always bending over notes and coins. Our bank, the food bank, was full of people in bright clothes who always smiled and asked us how we were doing. They were so kind and funny that they even made Mum forget about being embarrassed and ashamed about having to go to the bank to get us food. Mrs. Patel and Mr. Anthony and a girl called Natasha, who had hair as thick as a horse's tail, were my favourite bankers. We'd known them for nearly a whole year, ever since Dad left us to go and make a new family that he wanted to be with more than us. I wished every bank near us was like the food bank. No other bank in the world has shining tins and rustling packets of delicious food stacked from floor to the roof. No other bank lets you take things out without you putting money in first. And no other bank had a sign on the front counter that said, "Money not welcome here." It was the only place in the world, I think, that didn't like money. I wish the man who owned our flat and took rent money from Mum was like our bank. He was always asking for more money. He never had enough to make him happy. So the food bank for Nelson isn't just this place where he and his family can get the food that they need sometimes, but it's also a place where there are welcoming faces and people with big hearts who almost make them feel like they're part of the family. And in my works with people who work in food banks and with homeless charities, I always find that that's the way. This place doesn't just become a place to get something from, it's also something that gives you more than that. It's a place that gives you love and friendship and lots of smiling faces as well. So, as with all my books, as I said, there's a mystery that is happening in the book, and in this case, in the Great Food Bank Heist, something is happening to the food bank where less and less food are reaching children like Nelson and their families. And all his friends at the Breakfast Club are very, very worried about what's going on. So Nelson embarks on a quest with his best friends, Harry and Krish, to find out exactly what's happening and who it is that could possibly be wanting to steal from somewhere as great as the food bank. So I really hope you enjoy the story. I'm so grateful to Barrington Stokes for helping me put this book together, and so grateful to Marcus Rashford and Jack Monroe and Dame Emma Thompson and the army of volunteers out there across the country, and cafes and restaurants and anybody who's helping to deliver food banks and breakfast clubs as well in schools. Now I also want to thank you before I leave. I also want to thank all of you who buy or support the book in any way, because proceeds from the book will be going to Trussell Trust Food Banks and Greg's Foundation Breakfast Clubs, who are doing so many beautiful works across the country to ensure that children like Nelson and his family get the help that they need. So thank you so much for listening to me. I hope you enjoy the story, and no matter what book you're reading, I hope you love your reading adventures. Goodbye!